Director of Afghanistan Research and Evaluation Unit, an Afghan think tank. Orzala, thank you so much for joining us. Have the Taliban given any indication, any sort of hint that they might be prepared to preserve the gains made in women's rights since they were deposed following the US invasion?
Well, in the pre-negotiation phase, as almost we are here so far, there aren't really serious signs. All we have heard so far is that, why are you so worried? Don't worry, there will not be any strong restrictions as before. In the informal conversations that previously a number of men and also a number of women had with them, in informal conversations, they insist on the fact that it will not be a precise return to the dark days of their domination in the past. But in the formal and rhetorical sense, there hasn't been any signs of a serious change or commitment so far that we sort of observe.
I mean, we now understand that 3.5 million girls are enrolled in school in Afghanistan after the Taliban, as we were saying, had banned girls from gaining an education. 28% of the parliament in Afghanistan last year was made up of women. What role have women played in the peace process itself?
Well, women across the country, from rural to urban areas, from provincial capitals to districts and villages, all of them were strongly mobilized, calling for peace and calling for an immediate ceasefire. Over the past years, since everyone in Afghanistan come to a conclusion that this war cannot be won through bombardments and destruction and war, we have all raised our voices for peace and for an immediate ceasefire. Unfortunately, the warring factions, the warring sides, are more interested still in continuing the violence. Women have played a critical role. I'm leading a research organization with skills and capacity to do research and studies across the countries, and we have examples of women peace leaders at the village level trying to make peace between two families and two communities. So I want to sort of use this platform and share my confidence on the fact that for Taliban it will be impossible to come to an agreement with anyone in Afghanistan, let alone the government and our representatives right now in Doha, to continue and return to their back practices. Those were against the principles of Islam, against the principles of Afghanistan as a nation with a long, long history of civilization. So Taliban have to really adopt themselves, and there is a huge responsibility towards the rest of the people, particularly those representing the people in the very initial conversations, to make them realize that this was a mistake and they should not put any restrictions on women's political, economic, and social space in the society.
Orzala, do you think it's more than a problem of the Taliban restricting women and not allowing women to take a full role in whatever they choose to do? Orzala, I wanted to give you an example, okay, because I had a really, really good friend. We did our master's degree together. She was half French and half Swedish. She was 6 feet tall with long blonde hair. She worked for an NGO in Afghanistan just before 9/11. She was in Mazar-e-Sharif, and she was working with tribal elders. They weren't Taliban. She used to say that they couldn't look her in the eye. She'd be giving her advice in a room full of men who were looking down at the ground, and they weren't Taliban.
Absolutely. 7 years ago, I wrote a piece in Guardian. It's still available online, luckily, and I've raised this question. The concern with regards to women's position in the society, the concerns with regards to violence against women, unfortunately, is not limiting to Taliban. Taliban are known to be a regime opposing women's public role in the public space, but unfortunately, within the current system, within the current system of governance and in our society, we, like many other societies, societies in general, and in particular traditional societies, we have a very long way to go. But as someone who have been involved organizing underground literacy classes for girls during the time that the Taliban were ruling, I can say that women will not simply surrender. We have seen a lot of progress made. I have myself sat with the tribal elders from different parts of the country. Like your example, I can share the example of men in Nuristan, where I built a school for girls, and I realized after a few months that the school was full of boys. So when I tried to sort of communicate with the community elders of Nuristan, they were like, what would a Nuristani girl do if they study? And I looked at them and I said, what do you think I am doing? Okay, fine, I'm not from Nuristan, but your daughter could sit in my place, leading an organization that will provide education for girls. And believe it or not, this was in 2005, I think, when I had this conversation. These elders returned back to their villages, and now from the same area, you have a lot of secondary and high school graduates. I would not have exact data on higher education and universities, but I can assure you that Nuristan has much more educated girls than they had back in the late 90s or early 2000s. So people are changing, and it's true that Taliban are not the only hurdle towards women's place in the public space. But what I'm trying to highlight here, and what women in Afghanistan are trying to highlight, is that a dominated regime or a governance system should facilitate this process of equal opportunities for men and women within our constitution, within the framework of our national and religious values, which is Islam as a Muslim majority country.
Orzala, thank you so much indeed. Really interesting always to have you on the program. Orzala Nemat speaking to us from London.